Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's your guy, Prince. Thank you for tuning in to the Redshirt Report. We're going to talk about James Franklin and the Penn State job. Who's going to take it? There's been a lot of names thrown around. As of yet, Matt Rule seems to be the favorite. I don't know if that'll change or not, or if we'll actually go there. All that, we'll have to see how that plays out in real time. Um, but he's not the first coach, believe it or not. We've had 7 coaches already been fired, which is wild to think. But, I mean, if you're not performing, I guess it's the rule now, or the way of the college football game now, or the layout, is that you can get fired in the middle of the season if they think you're just not good enough. And the Heisman odds, they've been updated, and Carson Beck is now the front runner, which is crazy because if you ever told me that Carson Beck would be the favorite to win the Heisman, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. So yeah, and then we'll get into some of the games of the week. You guys know how it goes. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you guys tap in and subscribe. Your brain wants this smoke. Now, as I'm sure all you guys know, James Franklin fired. He was ousted from Penn State after disappointing loss to Northwestern. Their season is over, I think, if you're Penn State, because you're not going to make the playoffs. So even if you go on to win, you don't have a chance at the playoffs, and you still have to play Ohio State, which is a game that they normally lose. So I mean, even if they go on to win every game, all hope is done for them. The best thing they could do going forward is just try to rebuild or figure out what kind of program they want to be, or who's the coach that is going to get them to the next level and get them to a national championship. Um, I didn't expect Franklin to be fired in the middle of the season. I thought if anything they would have waited, or he would have left on his own at the end of the season, or he would have been fired after the season was over. I did not expect for him to be fired the way that he was. Um, Now, no reports have come out about foul play, or that Franklin had any ill will, or that there was any tension between him and the Penn State's sports administration. Um, but I think that I wouldn't be surprised if reports came out about some kind of foul play or some kind of tension between Franklin and the head of Penn State's athletic department. Um, yeah, I mean, again, I think the pressure was on for sure, but I don't think anyone expected him to be fired in the middle of the season. So maybe it's as simple as he wasn't winning games, so you fired him. But I think you need to look a little into this and look a little closer, not just at the surfacey details or what's came to light. Try to, if you think about it in context of what happened, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some ill will or something went wrong between the two parties. Now, if you're James Franklin, at the very least, you're getting paid $50 million, which is the second largest college football buyout in NFL history. College football history. So, at the very least, you're still getting 50+ million. So at least there's that. But I mean, he's out of a job now. Unfortunate way to go. Unfortunate way for Penn State's season to end, because now they've become irrelevant. But that's just the way it is. Crazy thing is, he's not the first coach to get fired, believe it or not. As to this point, there's been 7 coaches that have already been fired. Includes Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, UAB, so some mid-range programs there. But I think we're seeing a shift in college football where you're seeing more coaches being fired, more like an NFL style, where like they're being fired in the middle of the season if they're not performing. That hasn't always been the expectation. I think even going back, I want to go back 5 years ago, before this whole NIL deal blew up, or NIL and this new college football layout, it was, you're not performing at the end of the year, you're gone. We're going to fire you. But at this season, we've seen 7 coaches already been fired, and that's the midpoint of the season. The midpoint of the season, which is something we've never really seen before in college football. I think with this new layout, teams are becoming more and more structured, like an NFL team. So Penn State, they've got an intern head coach. They've got an intern ready, and I'm sure they're going out and they're looking for like a head coach. But they've already got a guy lined up for an intern job who's ready to take over the team and who's coaching the team as we speak. They've already got that lined up. They've got that lined up. They're going out and interviewing people and getting ready to sign contracts and bring in their next head coach. But like if you look at the layout, I think the bigger context and why this is so important is because we're seeing that college teams, college football teams in specific, are becoming more structured like the NFL. And we already see that with the NIL and team and kids being able to essentially transfer, which is like the equivalent of getting traded in the NFL to a certain sense, like because if you're an NFL player and you want out, you demand a trade, and then they trade you to somebody. They trade you to this or this team, right? Generally speaking. And that's what we're seeing in college football. We're seeing kids transfer. We're seeing people transfer so they could get more money or they could play for a bigger program or do this and that. That's essentially the same as the NFL. So I don't know how I feel about it. I just think it's something worth noting that in a lot of ways, college football has made that shift and is becoming more and more like the NFL and is becoming less of the sport of college football, and that what gives it that distinctness, that individuality that separates it from the NFL. So I just think that's something worth noting. And shout out to Carson Beck for being the front runner for the Heisman. If you would have told me that beginning of the season that Heisman Beck would ever be a favorite or would even be considered a Heisman front runner, I would have kind of laughed given how things ended for him in Georgia. But he is playing good, so I just wanted to make a quick note of that. Shout out Carson Beck for playing out of his mind. He's by far been one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best players in the nation, and I mean, maybe other than Ty Simpson, maybe I think he's definitely deserved it. So yeah, that's good for him. Now, let's get into the upset of the week. And for this week, I've got Oklahoma at South Carolina. I think South Carolina could get the home win, could upset Oklahoma while Oklahoma's on the road. Now, the big questions that I think everyone has, or the biggest question I should say, everyone has going into this game is John Mateer. Now, that Texas game, I was excited, and I said this in the video, that Oklahoma would have beaten Texas. Now, that didn't happen. In fact, Texas just played a great all-around game. Arch Manning looked great, but that's besides the point. The storyline was that John Mateer was going to play, even though we didn't really know if he was 100% healthy or if he could have gone back into the game or like if he was going to be on a snap count. He wasn't. He played the entire game, but it was very clear that this man hadn't healed. It was very clear from that first drive, those first couple of drives, that he was not the same. That arm, his hand has not fully healed yet. Um, he played, which I applaud him for, but he didn't play good. He didn't play his best football. Neither did Oklahoma as a whole, but specifically him. He didn't play his best football. And you could tell. You could see it on the field. His throws weren't accurate. His throws weren't tight. Those tight spiral balls, like those good accurate throws that he's been making before the injury, he just didn't make in that Texas game. So the question you have to ask is, how is John Mateer fully healed? Is this hand healed, or is he going to try to kind of push through the pain, kind of like that Texas game, and go in there and play? Because if he plays like he did last week and he's still not fully healed, that's a problem. That's a problem. And South Carolina is going to take advantage of that. Because on the other side of the ball, you got Lenore Sellers, who is an amazing quarterback. A little bit of a rough season so far. But at the end of the day, he's a great quarterback. So you have to wonder, is he going to be fully healthy? And if so, Or if they start him, what is that going to look like? Will he be back to that week 1, week 2 form before the injury where he was playing amazing ball? Or is he just going to collapse again like he did against Texas? I think that's the first thing you got to look out for. Secondly, Dylan Stewart from South Carolina. Everyone's talking about him, so I know that I'm not the first to talk about him, but he is absolutely insane. Like, that's a guy that you look at and be like, he's going to be something in the NFL. Like, that's the kind of talent that this man possesses. He's just, his athleticism is off the charts. Like, he's just a freak of nature, just a truly, truly athletic guy. Like, that, just bottom line. And he is going to wreak havoc. I think he is going to. I wouldn't be surprised if he has like a 3-sack game, a strip sack, or force bump. Like, he's going to. The box chart is going to be full of stats all for him. I can guarantee that. And the reason I can guarantee it is because Oklahoma, their offensive line has been shallow all season long. And if you watch that Texas game, the Texas OU game, John Mateer, when he was either being pressured because the O line wasn't giving him enough time to make throws, or he just wasn't throwing out good balls. So between those two things, Texas was able to stop Oklahoma's entire offense and then be able to go out there and drive down the field and eventually win the game. That's how they were able to do it, because defensively they looked okay. Um, Defensively, they didn't do anything like crazy, and I don't like. They did have the interceptions, but those were just bad balls from Mateer, like easy ones. But the defense, I think, were able to pressure Mateer enough, and they were able to really show that weakness of OU, offensive line, and they exposed it, and they did it over and over and over again, and there's nothing Oklahoma could do to stop it. So I think with a guy like Dylan Stewart on that defensive line, you're going to. I don't think it matters if you double team him, because they've got other guys. Their front seven is arguably one of the best in the nation. So even if it's not Dylan Stewart getting to the quarterback, one of those other guys, one of those 6, 7 guys will get to the quarterback and sack him or pressure him or make him throw a bad ball that turns into an interception or a turnover. So, but it all revolves around one guy, Dylan Stewart. It revolves around him, as simple as that. So for that reason, I think I have to take South Carolina. Another thing I'd like to note real quick before I move on to the rest of the games, South Carolina, they were in a similar position where they're kind of hovering around 500, like 3-3. And then it was around this midpoint of the season where they turned things around and they turned the Jets, and all of a sudden this team was balling out, winning every game. The defense was playing efficiently. The offense was clicking. And if history repeats itself, which I think there's a good chance that it does, this would be the time and the place where that turnaround happens. So for those reasons, I think I have to take this week's upset of the week. I got to take South Carolina over Oklahoma. Now, we're going to dive into some of the games of the week. We got LSU at Vanderbilt. And let me just say, I'm not particularly a Vanderbilt fan, but let me just say, it feels good to be in Nashville and to see on Saturdays when Vanderbilt is playing, Nashville is just full of fans. Because for years, that was not the case. For years, it was Sundays were full of fans and, going out to Broadway and doing that thing. Saturdays were empty. The turnaround has been crazy because Vanderbilt they've been such a good team. One of the biggest surprises, one of the biggest teams, I think this year that has really exceeded expectations or what was expected of them. And they're playing an LSU team. I got to take Vandy. It's a home game. The fans are going to be going crazy. Diego Pavia is going to do whatever it takes to win this game. I'm taking Vanderbilt all the way. And I think You want to look at the quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier versus Diego Pavia. Pavia's healthy, 100%. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about with OU and John Mateer. Garrett Nussmeier's been dealing with an injury too. I'm pretty sure it's like a torso/hip injury. Um, so he hasn't really been able to throw it downfield or make those deep throws, kind of like what he did last year. Now, I don't know how much he's recovered or if it's still lingering or will be lingering by the time that the game takes place. But I think even if Nussmeier is like 75 to 80% healthy, if you can't make those downfield throws, then you don't really have much of a game. And especially for LSU, this is a team that doesn't have a good ground game either. They're one of the worst in the SEC when it comes to running the ball and having an overall run game. So pair that with the fact that not being able to throw it downfield, then I think that the defense, at least Vandy's defense, is going to be able to stop them or put them in uncomfortable situations like 3rd and long or these 3rd and medium situations where they just simply can't convert it. Nussmeier can't do it. So, yeah, I think when we're looking at LSU's offense versus Vandy's offense, I think Vandy's offense, they played better all year. Pavia's going to run with the ball. You're going to give the ball to Cedric Alexander. The two of them combined are pretty solid. They're tough to stop when both are running the ball efficiently. Also, Vanderbilt is second in the SEC in red zone efficiency. Like, they've been efficient all year when they get to the red zone. So, and I think that's going to continue against LSU. I think that LSU will be able to stop them a couple of drives maybe, or might be able to get a stop early on in the game, but I don't think they'll be able to do that if Vandy is consistently moving the ball and getting downfield like they usually do. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pavia has a rushing touchdown or has a game like that where he's throwing for multiple touchdowns, he's rushing the ball, he's handing the ball off to Alexander. I just think that this offense as a whole is really going to click, and they're going to outplay the defense because LSU's defense hasn't been bad, but I think when you look at the offense and who Pavia is and what he's trying to prove, you can't overlook him or this team. Give me Vanderbilt getting the home win against LSU. Now, the next game we got is Ole Miss at Georgia. And I think this game could go either way. You can make an argument for both teams, but I think that I have to give Ole Miss the nod for this. And again, it could go either way, but I think that Ole Miss, here's something that I learned this the other day. Ole Miss leads the nation in 30-plus yard plays, in explosive plays. Think about that. They lead the nation in 30-plus yard plays. And it's not even close. It really isn't. And that's part of the reason why they're undefeated and the success that they've had this year is because they're able to make these great plays, these great explosive plays that get them downfield and get them into these favorable positions where they can go ahead and score. Pair that with the fact that I don't want to say Georgia's bad because they're not a bad football team. They're not a bad football team. However, they have been slow. Look like they haven't, something isn't right about them. Usually you look at a Georgia football team and you're like, they're physical, but most importantly, they're fast and they could score at will. Like whenever they want, they could score and get some points on the board. I don't know what it is this season, but that just hasn't really been the case. Are they scoring? Yes. Offensively, they're a solid unit. But I think that I don't know if I wouldn't say it's Gunnar Stockton's fault. I wouldn't say it's a quarterback play. That's the issue here. But they just start really slow offensively. Like they're not able to generate points. You look against the Tennessee game and that was the case. Now, they did end up and go on to win against Tennessee in overtime, but that first quarter, they were non-existent. They were slow. They weren't playing with any tempo at all. They were never in the game, at least in that first quarter. Same case for Alabama, where they kind of fell apart and they started off really slow. Now, they eventually got themselves back in that game, but by the time they did, it was too late because Alabama had full control. And if you're Georgia and you're in a division, you're in a conference like the SEC where conference play matters. It really does. And you already got a conference loss to Alabama. You can't afford a loss to Georgia, a loss to Ole Miss, because a loss to Ole Miss would take you possibly out of the college football playoff on the whole, or at least put you on the brink of it. So if you're Georgia, there's a lot to play for, but you can't have a slow start, especially against this offense, because they will take advantage of it, and I don't think they'll be able to get back into it like they did against Tennessee. And I think the other thing to note is that this is kind of a quarterback battle between Gunnar Stockton and Chambliss for Ole Miss. Stockton's played nice. He's played solid, but I think Chambliss has really proved himself this season, and you could argue that he's been the biggest reason for Ole Miss's success offensively. So that's something to note for too. But it will be close, but Georgia can't start the game slow. If they do, which I think they will, based off how they've played all year, I've got to give the victory to Ole Miss. Now, we got Tennessee at Alabama, the nighttime game, and this is going to be a good one too. A big-time rivalry. That's the only thing I could say. Tennessee fans know what it means. Alabama fans know what it means to win this game. Now, I've talked about Alabama for the past 2 weeks. I said that they would lose to Vanderbilt, which they went and won. And then I said that they would lose to Mizzou, which they did not lose to Mizzou. They also won that game. So for that reason, I don't think I could count out Alabama for a third straight week in a row. Give me Alabama getting the home win against Tennessee. Now, I think it's as simple as it comes down to one thing, and that one thing is Tennessee's defense. Now, the front seven, they've got a top 5 sack rate. Like, they're one of the best when it comes to getting pressure and sacking the quarterback, which is good. The problem becomes their secondary, which has been a problem all year, but they've been able to compensate for it in the opponents that they've played, and they've been able to get past that. I don't know if they could get past that against a team like Alabama. I love Joey Aguilar. I love this defense. I think that they've got a great team overall, but they don't have a secondary, or at least a guy that could shut down a side of the field. So I think if they're not getting to Ty Simpson every time, if they're not creating pressure every single play, which isn't a realistic expectation, it wouldn't be surprising if Ty's able to throw it downfield and make these big throws, or make these downfield throws that turn into touchdowns or big plays, because the secondaries, they've been exposed all season, and UT knows that. But they don't have the depth to fix it. They just don't. So it's just kind of the way it is. Everyone knows it. UT knows it. Certainly Alabama is going to try to take advantage of it. Now, I think if you're UT, you do have a chance to win this game. And if you do, it's going to be through the run game. Alabama's run defense, they were kind of able to stop Ahmad Hardy. He only had I think it was 60 yards maybe. I could be wrong there, but they were kind of able to limit him to what he usually gets on the ground. But as a whole, throughout the year, this Alabama run D has been awful. They have not been very good. Now, against Mizzou, they were able to win, and they were able to stop Ahmad Hardy, but can they do it against UT? A team that does rush the ball well, that is efficient when it comes to running the ball. And I don't know if they'll be able to. I just think that it comes down to whose weakness is worse. And in this context, for this game, I think the lack of a secondary from UT is enough to give Alabama the edge in this game. If they had even one guy that could go out and shut down that a certain side of the field, I could say yes, I'm going to lean towards UT. But the truth is, they just don't have that. They don't have the talent, the depth. They just simply don't have the means to stop Alabama with those deep throws. So I think that Alabama will eventually be able to expose that, and things will kind of go their way. It will be a close game. It won't be a blowout, but I think kind of like that Mizzou game, kind of like that Vandy game, it'll be close at half. Tennessee might even be leading at one point, or maybe leading going into half, but expect Alabama to come back at home. They'll be able to generate some momentum into the third quarter, into the fourth, and kind of be able to pull away with this game. Now, USC Notre Dame, also a night game, I'm pretty sure. I could double check that, but I've got USC getting the road win against Notre Dame. And I've got a couple reasons for this. But one, let me say that Jaden Mayava has been a surprise. He's played really well. And USC, I think Lincoln Riley deserves some credit, and I'll give credit where credit's due. And I think Lincoln Riley deserves some credit because you look at USC and they've only lost once. They only got one loss on the year, which came to Illinois, which was a close game, which was a game that they should have won. If you go back and watch that game, you'll see that they should have won that game. So, but the biggest reason for their turnaround, or at least the reason why they've been as good as they have this year, is because of Jaden Mayava at quarterback. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name right, but Mayava has exceeded, I think, expectations or what many thought of USC. I wasn't considering them an elite program or a program that could do something in the Big Ten. That just hasn't really been their style. They haven't really lived up to expectations, especially during the Lincoln Riley era. They just haven't really had that oomph, They haven't had that X factor that makes me say this team is good or that this team could beat a Notre Dame in past seasons. But Mayava this season has kind of proved himself. Now, I'm not saying he's a Heisman guy, but I am saying that there is talent there, and he is the reason for why they're doing so good, at least offensively. Defensively, they have been exposed at times, but they have a solid unit that can come together and make plays when they need to. But I think it's going to come down to quarterback play, and I don't really trust Notre Dame and their quarterback. CJ Carr, he's been okay at best. He has made questionable throws, but I simply don't trust Carr more than Mayava. I just don't. So for that reason, I got to say that USC, I think they'll be able to get the road win. But I think more importantly, if you look at this game, this has huge playoff implications. This has really affect the landscape of things because Notre Dame, they started off the season 0-2. They climbed their way back. They've gotten these wins, and here they are, they're ranked. USC is ranked 2. If Notre Dame loses, that's it for them. Their season's over. Even if you get a 3-loss team in the college football playoff, it wouldn't be Notre Dame because of strength of schedule, because of who they played, and the fact that they've lost to every ranked team they played. They lost to Miami, right? Then they lost to Texas A&M. So 2 losses there. They can't afford this loss. They simply can't. So they're going to have to figure out how to compensate for that poor quarterback play. And if that's feeding Jeremiah Love the ball 50 times so he could win the game for you, then so be it. But you've got to figure out a game plan to stop Maava in this USC offense because they've got a bunch of guys at wide receiver. I do think that they have some health concerns with their running backs. I think their top two guys, their top two backs are injured. I don't know if they'll play or if what their situation is. I think Notre Dame does have a chance, though, and this kind of goes back to the Illinois game. If you watch the Illinois game, one of the reasons why Illinois was able to come back and win that game was because of penalties and turnovers. USC, they have limited the amount of turnovers that they're doing, so that's improved, but the penalties haven't. They're averaging about 8 offensive penalties per game. So if you're Notre Dame, if you can get them in these situations where it's like offsides or holding or things like that, and you're able to put them in these situations where it's third and long, and they're in these third and long situations and can't convert. If you can do that for a vast, not even the vast majority of the game, for like a quarter of the game or for a quarter of the drives that USC takes, you could keep yourself in the game and have a chance at winning. And that's something that is more reliant on USC and not making those dumb plays or those dumb penalties on offense. So that's something worth noting and something to look out for. And if you're Notre Dame, if you win this game, right, it's kind of smooth sailing. This is Notre Dame's remaining schedule. You got Boston College, Navy, Pitt, Syracuse, Stanford. I'm going to let that sink in for a bit. That's a terrible schedule. They could win out easy. Pitt has been solid this year, but Notre Dame could beat Pitt. No one is saying Pitt could beat Notre Dame. But if you lose this game to USC, it doesn't matter whether you win the rest of those games or not, because no team or no committee is going to consider you serious. They're not going to be in December where they're trying to figure out the playoff committee, who's in, who's out. There's no chance where Notre Dame's in. There's no chance. And you look at USC's schedule, if they get a win and they go on to win some of these games, they could be a playoff team. And I say could because you never know what happens, but they really could. USC's got Nebraska, who have been on a roll, Northwestern, Iowa, Oregon, UCLA. Now, Northwestern, that's a team they could beat. Iowa, another team they could beat. Nebraska could give them a challenge, but that's going to be a close game to watch. Same with Oregon. I think that they will lose to Oregon, and I think that they could beat UCLA. So if you look at USC's season, assuming that they do win against Notre Dame on the road, you could very well be looking at a team that makes the playoffs. That's kind of in a situation like Arizona State last year where they're like a 12th seed and you don't really consider them a playoff threat, but then they're able to go on this run or be able to generate some momentum to get them on a run, kind of like what Arizona State did last year. Because no one considered Arizona State a team that could win or go on this run, yet they did, and they almost beat Texas in the process. They almost had it, So that's something to watch. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to quarterback play. I think it's as simple as that, and I trust Maava more. I like his style, his confidence, ultimately his swagger. It's just better than CJ Carr's and his ability. And I think that you can say goodbye to Notre Dame in the college football playoffs because I think that they're going to lose to USC. Alrighty, guys, that is the show. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Redshirt Report. Now, do me a favor if you're still watching, tap in and subscribe. Your brain wants to smoke. Thank you.